No one had heard from Earth in over 100 years. The core systems said humanity went extinct after the solar collapse. That was the story passed around the stars like a bedtime tale. Earth's last transmission was a garbled distress call, static and screams. After that, silence. For most of the galaxy, Earth became a graveyard in the minds of younger races, a planet of dust, bones, and burned-out satellites drifting like ghosts above the blue marble that once roared. But they didn't die. They hid. Admiral Terran of the Halvar Dominion had heard rumors, pirate stories mostly, about strange ships with ancient Terran markings salvaging dead sectors, disappearing before scanners could lock. Others told of lone freighters vanishing near the Orion Drift, where old Earth colonies once stood. The Galactic Council ignored it. Fairy tales, they called them. Then the humans returned. The Dominion flagship Vraxilon hovered in low orbit above a once-abandoned planet called Ordos IV. Terran stood on the command deck, his 4 eyes narrowed at the dusty terrain below. The planet had gone quiet after being mined dry by Dominion forces 50 years ago. There shouldn't have been anything left, let alone signs of movement. But something flickered. Something big. "Sir," the navigation officer chirped. "We're picking up heat signatures below the surface. Dozens of them. They're powering up." Terran frowned. "Is it natural geothermal activity?" The officer hesitated. "Negative, sir. These patterns are artificial. Engine cores." That got everyone's attention. Suddenly the planet shook, not from below, but from the air. It was as if the sky itself sighed. And then they rose. Old ships, not sleek like Dominion cruisers or elegant like Elvery star yachts. These were brutal, rust-scarred behemoths of steel and fire. Every line screamed war. Thick armor, rotating cannons, engines that growled rather than hummed. The largest one, a destroyer with the name Judicator carved into its hull, climbed out of a hidden silo with the fury of the planet behind it. Dust clouds followed like storm fronts. The Dominion scanners went haywire trying to track it. Terran staggered back as the ship's full power signature hit the bridge like a wave. "This isn't possible," his science officer stammered. "This thing's older than our entire Navy, but it's outputting more energy than our entire fleet combined." That was when the voice came through. It wasn't a normal hail. It bypassed their comm systems entirely, bleeding straight into their minds like an invasive thought. "We never left. We just waited. And now we remember everything you forgot." Gasps spread across the bridge. Terran tried to respond, but he couldn't. The Dominion's encryption protocols were worthless. He could only watch as Judicator turned its guns toward the sky. A second ship emerged, then a third. The hidden fleet stretched miles across, crawling out of ravines and mountains like buried titans awakening. The Dominion armada scrambled, raising shields and charging weapons, but it was too late. The first blast from the human destroyer didn't just cut through space, it erased it. A Dominion frigate vanished in a white-hot blink, atomized down to its name. "Stand down," the voice commanded again, "or be reminded why we were once feared." Terran didn't stand down. Pride wouldn't let him. But as the rest of the human fleet unveiled itself across the galaxy, each awakening from centuries of silence, he realized they had made a terrible mistake. The humans weren't gone. They were rebuilding. And now they were back. Not with sleek diplomacy, not with politics or trade. They returned with rust, fire, and memory, the kind of memory that turns legends into warnings. Terran watched as a second Dominion cruiser, Vaz Thur, exploded into blue fire. No warning, no countdown, just annihilation. He staggered backward, gripping the edge of the command deck rail as the shockwave rocked the Vraxilon. His crew scrambled, voices overlapping in panic. "They're targeting us!" "No lock-on delay, no shield breach, it just went through." "How old are these ships again?" "Too old," Terran muttered, "and too angry." He stared at the massive human destroyer, now hovering in the sky like a sleeping beast awakened. The Judicator made no further move. It didn't need to. The message was already clear. The humans were showing restraint, for now. "Bring us into high orbit," he ordered through gritted teeth, "and try to re-establish comms. I want to speak to whoever's commanding that fleet." "Sir, they bypassed everything. Our channels, our systems. They're using something else." Terran turned slowly, his eyes dark and hollow. "Then find another way. Because if we can't talk, we'll have to fight. And we're not winning that." As the Vraxilon slowly pulled away, down below the buried cities of Ordos IV hummed with life. Humanity's underground colonies, once thought destroyed, were now shining with hidden power. Energy fields lit ancient concrete towers. Massive steel doors opened like mouths of war. Dozens, maybe hundreds of ships were being rolled out onto subterranean launch pads. They weren't built for beauty. They were built to kill. On board the Judicator, Commander Yara Holt leaned over the central display, watching the Dominion fleet scramble. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. "This isn't war," she said to no one in particular. "It's remembrance." Her second-in-command, a cyborg veteran named Silas Core, grunted as he adjusted his artificial arm. "They sure don't remember us kindly." "They don't remember us at all," she replied. "And that's the problem." Yara's voice triggered a relay system across the fleet. Thousands of buried AI systems flickered to life. The human defense protocol had stayed dormant for nearly a century, hidden in encrypted vaults across dozens of dead sectors. But now, their time had come. A new channel opened on the display. It wasn't from the Dominion flagship. It was from the Council. Someone finally noticed. A shimmering alien hologram appeared above the display, the image of Counselor Verak of the Core Systems. His long neck stretched upward as his 4 fingers trembled. "Human, Commander," he said slowly. "This action, this show of aggression violates the Peace of 12. Yara tilted her head, voice cold. "Peace? You erased us, called us extinct, picked apart our ruins and mocked our silence. That wasn't peace. That was amnesia." Verak hesitated. "Then what do you call what you're doing now?" She stepped forward. "Balance." With a flick of her hand, she sent a cascade of data, scans, records, footage, showing hidden Terran bunkers, stolen tech recovered from Dominion labs, corpses experimented on in alien strongholds. The galaxy had treated humanity's fall as opportunity, but humanity had never truly fallen. They'd burrowed, healed, and waited. Yara cut the channel. Time to wake the others. Across the stars, encrypted pulses launched from the human ships, bouncing across wormholes, derelict satellites, and long-dead relays. Each signal hit a buried node in a forgotten system. And one by one, across the galaxy, lights turned back on. Earth wasn't alone. Colonies once thought dead lit up in reds and golds. Ships launched from moons no longer marked on galactic maps. Human-built AIs reawakened after decades of sleep, whispering old codes through the vacuum. On Terra Prime, the real Earth, hidden behind a cloaking array so complex even the core systems believed it destroyed. President Kyle Draven opened his eyes as his chamber lights turned green. "They remember," he said softly. Beside him, Admiral Voss stepped forward. "Then it's time we remind them who we are." And just like that, the rebirth of the Terran Order had begun. It began not with war, but with whispers. A day after the humans revealed themselves, the galaxy trembled beneath the weight of sudden uncertainty. No one attacked again. Not yet. But the message was loud enough to shatter a century of confidence. On the Dominion homeworld of Velkara, emergency meetings erupted in every tier of government. Military analysts tore through every scrap of old Earth data, trying to piece together how these forgotten savages had built ships strong enough to disintegrate star cruisers. The core systems argued over diplomacy versus force. The trade guilds demanded reparations for Terran salvage now deemed stolen property. Everyone was scrambling. And the humans? They waited. Commander Yara Holt sat inside the war room of the Judicator, staring at the incoming flood of messages. Most were threats dressed in formalities. Some were genuine confusion. Young civilizations who'd never even met a human before now. They asked questions. Wanted peace. Some begged for alliance. A few warned her of assassination plots. But Yara wasn't focused on politics. She had a much older score to settle. A slow, blinking red icon on her personal terminal caught her eye. It was an encrypted archive from her grandfather's time. A general during the collapse. She tapped it. The screen lit up with a shaky recording of a battlefield strewn with Terran bodies, burned flags, and alien soldiers planting their banners atop broken Earth tanks. This, the old general's voice crackled, wasn't defeat. It was betrayal. The council turned their backs, let us burn, and took what they wanted from the ashes. But we buried our teeth in the dirt, and one day, we bite back. She watched the last frame. Her grandfather bloodied, holding a detonator to collapse the bunker on himself to protect classified tech from falling into alien hands. She didn't flinch. She remembered. Silas Core entered the room quietly. The Velkarans just broadcasted an ultimatum. Leave the Ordos sector or be wiped from existence. Yara didn't even blink. Send them a reply. What do you want it to say? She stood slowly. Tell them, the Ordos sector doesn't belong to them. It never did. It was hours before the Council even knew how to sail the stars. Silas smirked. Short and sweet. Got it. Meanwhile, Admiral Terran, aboard the Vraxilon, was growing desperate. He had witnessed the impossible. Ships older than his empire wielding power more devastating than anything in the Dominion arsenal. The more he watched the footage, the more he feared this wasn't a rogue incident. It was a reawakening. We underestimated them, he finally admitted aloud during a high command briefing. We didn't just leave them behind. We pushed them into a corner and forgot they were still watching. Then we strike first, growled General Ross, a brute of a Velkaran bred for war. Wipe out their fleet before they rebuild any further. You still don't get it, Terran snapped. This isn't their full fleet. These are just the first ships, the tip of the blade. We don't even know how many are still buried, hidden. They've been planning this for decades, maybe centuries. Silence. Ross growled, but said no more. Across the galaxy, in the great floating city of Velis Prime, a meeting of the Galactic Council was called. For the first time in over 2 centuries, the seat-marked Terran Alliance flickered to life. It wasn't Yara Holt who appeared, nor Kale Dreven. It was an AI, humanoid in shape, but gleaming silver with a fractured ancient crest of Earth over its chest. It spoke in a calm voice that still carried thunder. You stripped our name from your records, deleted us from your archives, but names are not erased. They are remembered, and we are very much remembered. Councillor Verak tried to speak, but the AI raised one finger. We are not here to ask for a seat. We are here to warn you. The room fell still. The AI's eyes lit brighter. Do not come for what's buried. Do not touch what you do not understand. The old Terran fleets slumber in places your maps forgot. But the moment you dig, they'll rise. And the next time we launch, we won't be warning anyone. The message ended. And across the galaxy, a cold fear swept every empire. Because deep down, they all realized something brutal, something undeniable. Humanity had never truly lost. They just played dead better than anyone else. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy slipped into something worse than war: silence. Trade routes froze. Civilian transports rerouted around any human-claimed sectors. Black markets surged with old Earth tech suddenly declared illegal relics. Fleets moved, but didn't fire. Every empire was watching the Terrans now, waiting to see if the ghosts from humanity's past would rise further from the soil of forgotten worlds. And rise they did. One by one, human-controlled sectors, long abandoned, stripped, or colonized by other species, lit up with activation codes. Ancient bunkers cracked open. Defense satellites blinked to life. Shipyards once thought ruined spat out newly awakened dreadnoughts. Orbiting moons trembled under the thrum of resurrected machines. No declarations, no formal war, just a quiet reclaiming of what was once theirs. On Terra Prime, deep beneath the surface in the sanctum of memory, President Kale Dreven stood inside a chamber of glass and fire, surrounded by holographic memorials of the lost systems, each representing a planet or colony left to die during the solar collapse. He wasn't a man of passion, but something burned behind his eyes. "We were abandoned," he said to the circle of commanders around him, "and while the galaxy drank from our ruins, we rebuilt in shadows. Now they want peace, because they finally understand the mistake they made." Commander Yara's image flickered into the chamber. "They'll never let us rise. Not truly. They're afraid now." Kyle nodded. "Good. Fear is honest. Fear means they're starting to remember why they once needed us, why they feared our minds more than our weapons." Silas Core's voice cut in, rough as gravel. "Should we strike first? Hit a core fleet, make it loud?" "No," Kyle said simply. "We don't need to strike first. They'll do that for us." And they did. It was the Corellians, arrogant, cold-blooded strategists who had once colonized 2 Terran outer colonies during the collapse. They didn't believe the hype. They thought humans were bluffing. So they sent a fleet. Not massive, but symbolic. 50 cruisers, enough to make a point. They entered Terran space near Vortan's Reach, a dead mining system that hadn't seen light in over 70 years. They didn't leave. No distress calls, no wreckage, just nothing. A week later, a single Corellian warpod was returned, ejected into neutral space near the Council's station. Inside were the crew's insignias, scorched by energy no species could identify. Pinned beside them was a data chip. The Council played it in private. It was a recording of the fleet's destruction. Frame by frame, grainy and terrifying. Human ships didn't rush. They waited. Then struck with such precision that it didn't feel like war. It felt like execution. The Corellians hadn't even managed to target lock. Counselor Veyrak watched the footage in silence, then spoke what every empire was thinking. "We're not fighting humans anymore. We're fighting ghosts in steel." Back aboard the Judicator, Yara stood in the observation deck, watching as 3 more Terran ships emerged from deep space vaults. "Third Fleet's almost awake," Silas said, arms crossed. "We'll be at full strength within the month." Yara nodded. "And when that happens?" Silas smiled bitterly. "Then we stop reminding them." She finished for him, eyes locked on the stars. "We make them remember." Far from the chaos, on a quiet fringe planet in the Thalorian Reach, a child stared up at the sky. Her species had no wars with humans, no hatred. Just stories. Stories of the fire they once brought, the peace they once enforced, and the way they vanished when the galaxy no longer deserved them. And tonight, she saw a shape cross the sky, long, dark, thunderous. She pointed. "Mama, look, a shadow." Her mother, a former history scholar, froze, because she recognized the silhouette from the oldest Terran files, from a time before silence, a time before peace. "That's no shadow," she whispered. "That's a judgment." The sky cracked open. That's how it felt when the 4th Terran fleet arrived at Eltar Prime, a jewel world of the Dominion, known for its marble oceans and orbiting palaces, the kind of place the Dominion lords built for themselves while empires starved. But on this day, their comfort shattered. No one expected the Terrans to strike a core world. Not yet. Not this soon. But that was the problem with the old humans. They never played by the rules everyone else had grown comfortable with. The first ship appeared without warning. No warp signature. No energy spike. Just there. The solace of ruin hovered in low orbit, ancient in design, with a hull covered in etched names. The names of lost Earth cities: Chicago, Damascus, Seoul, Lagos, Sydney, Kabul, Kingston. Names that meant nothing to most of the galaxy, but everything to those who wore Terran blood. Then came the others. Dozens. A fleet not made for diplomacy or intimidation, but for revenge. From the Dominion Palace Tower, Lord Captain Zevra screamed orders at his fleet, orders that no longer mattered. The planetary defense systems came online too late, orbital guns charged, fighter squadrons launched, and in 6 minutes it was all gone. No fancy maneuvers, no speeches, just precise surgical destruction. One by one, the palace domes fell. Communications were jammed, civilian escape routes shut down, not by accident, but by choice. The Terrans didn't want prisoners. They wanted a message. Back on the solace of ruin, Captain Issa Monroe watched the flames from orbit, her face a cold sculpture of grief and rage. "They used this planet's gold to fund the pillaging of our colonies," she said softly. "Built their temples from the bones of our dead. How poetic, that now their temples burn with them still inside." Her weapons officer, a soft-spoken AI named Dorian, responded without emotion. "Targeting complete. No remaining resistance." Issa didn't blink. "Leave the capital ruins untouched. Let the galaxy see what silence bought them." And just like that, the 4th Fleet vanished, slipping into folded space like wraiths. The entire assault lasted under 10 minutes. But the aftermath rippled for decades. News spread like poison. The Dominion declared full war. The Council hesitated. And smaller empires, those who'd once fought beside humanity before the collapse, began to stir. Old oaths long buried under centuries of fear were now whispering again. One such whisper was a woman named Dr. Erin Voss, a historian of the Syrian Archive, a neutral species tasked with maintaining galactic history. She watched the footage from Eltar Prime with trembling hands. Unlike others, she knew what those Terran ships were. She'd studied them. Her life's work revolved around cataloging the war machines of the Terran Republic, and what she saw terrified her. "Those aren't even first-strike ships," she told her colleague in a hushed voice. "They're mid-tier." "What?" She nodded, pale. "The Terrans haven't even woken up their orbital dread hives yet. The real power, the God Steel cruisers, the solar battery juggernauts, they're still sleeping." The man beside her laughed nervously. "Surely they won't go that far." Dr. Voss looked him dead in the eyes. "They haven't even started." Back on Terra Prime, President Kyle Dreven stood in the Hall of Silence, where the great bell chimed once for every fallen world reclaimed. Behind him, a wall of stars marked with red pins showed how much of Terran space had now been retaken. "Eltar Prime has fallen," the room echoed with the report. Kyle nodded. "Let it burn." A young advisor shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, some of the council members are requesting dialogue. Peace talks." Kyle turned slowly, voice like a sharpened blade. Did they ask for peace when they stripped our dead of tech and sold it to the highest bidder? No, sir. Did they speak peace when they invaded Terra's moons, melted our flags into trophy metals, and used our survivors for testing? No, sir. Kyle stepped forward. Then let the next one burn too. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was righteous. Terran space was no longer forgotten. It was being remembered, one world at a time. The galaxy finally cracked. After Eltar Prime fell, fear turned to frenzy. The Dominion's central network, thought to be unbreachable, was infiltrated by a Terran signal that simply read, "We know where your kings sleep." Within 24 hours, 12 lesser empires pulled out of Dominion treaties. The Trade Syndicate collapsed its convoys. The Council tried to convene another emergency session, but only half of its members showed up. The others had gone dark. Not to plot, to hide. Terran broadcasts now interrupted regular programming on dozens of planets. Grainy, monochrome videos of orbital strikes, archival clips of Terran colonies being overrun during the collapse, and whispered voices speaking in dead Earth languages. Most viewers didn't understand the words, but they felt them. They felt the pain, the betrayal, the warning. Humanity wasn't just taking back their territory, they were educating the galaxy. In fire. Meanwhile, on the fringes of core space, Admiral Terran sat inside a steel interrogation cube aboard the Dominion flagship Alien's Crown. He'd been demoted, then detained, for failing to prevent the Terran resurgence. A scapegoat. The Empire needed someone to blame. He didn't resist, because none of it mattered now. Through the reinforced walls, he could hear the distant hum of a nervous fleet, fighters scrambling, shield arrays charging. The crew was tense, quiet, praying that today wouldn't be the day the sky opened again. Terran laughed. It wasn't a bitter laugh, just tired. Because he knew something the rest still didn't understand. Something none of their projections could explain. The Terrans weren't trying to win a war. They were spreading a truth. That nothing, no council, no dominion, no archive of civilization could outlive the memory of a species that refused to die. And that memory was now a living thing. Back on the Judicator, Commander Yara Holt read the incoming reports. Another Dominion stronghold had fallen. No shots fired, no resistance. The local governor simply surrendered when the Terran fleet entered orbit. He walked into the main plaza, dropped to his knees, and handed over planetary control codes to a drone. The message he sent along with them was short. We were wrong. We see that now. Silas Core leaned over the tactical table, raising an eyebrow. You're winning their minds now, not just their planets. Yara didn't smile. Fear is fast, but guilt is permanent. In the far reaches of space, even planets untouched by the war were beginning to riot. Minor species rose up, demanding that their governments explain what they knew about the Terran collapse. Survivors of old Earth colonies, once enslaved or scattered, began to speak publicly. Their stories were ugly, raw, unfiltered. Entire archives of hidden war crimes surfaced. Videos of alien scientists experimenting on Terran children. Footage of council ships locking Earth out of safe zones during the solar collapse. Deals made in shadow, over bodies, under the lie of peace. Now, the truth was a wildfire. And the humans? They didn't need to stoke it. They just needed to exist. Kyle Draven stood before a newly ignited star map. Red zones showed retaken worlds. Yellow showed systems destabilized by Terran resurgence. But the green ones? The green marked something far worse. For the Council, voluntary surrender. These were the worlds who'd bent the knee not out of fear, but of remorse. Humanity is not a species, Cale whispered to himself, tracing the green points. It's a reckoning. One of his aides entered the chamber with a message. Sir, Corps Command has sent a peace offer. Full recognition of Terran sovereignty. Apologies. Reparations. Coyle raised an eyebrow. What's the catch? They want us to stop. He walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. No, he said flatly. We stop when every grave has been avenged, when every lie is burned. The aide hesitated. And when that's done, Cale turned, voice ice cold. Then we teach them what peace looks like after fire. Because this wasn't revenge, this was balance, and balance had a name again, humanity. It began with murmurs of rebellion. Now it was a wave. Worlds that once bore the Dominion crest were tearing down their flags and raising Terran standards, not by force, but by choice. Even species with long histories of enmity toward humans began re-examining old truths. What was once dismissed as propaganda, the suffering of Earth, the silence after the collapse, the betrayal of the Galactic Council, was now undeniable. The galaxy's foundation was cracking under the weight of memory. In orbit over Caltraxis, a strategic mining world still loyal to the Dominion, the Terran Sixth Fleet arrived. No announcement, no display, just presence. The sky filled with black hulks, ships whose hulls still bore scorch marks from ancient battles, vessels older than the current galactic cycle itself. The Iron Wake, St. Petersburg's Vengeance, Cradle Storm, names pulled from Terran myth now hung over the planet like the weight of judgment. Governor Arl Threx, a cold-blooded Elvari loyalist, activated planetary defense systems before the humans could hail. They didn't respond. Not with messages, not with fire. They simply waited. For 6 hours. Then, the planetary grid began to collapse, not from weapons, but from within. Old Earth malware, buried deep in Dominion tech decades ago, activated with terrifying precision. Shields fell, turrets misfired, communications jammed, every system betrayed its master. Within moments, Caltraxis was defenseless. The humans still didn't attack. Instead, they opened every civilian channel with one repeating message. We are not here for your people. We are here for the ones who sold ours. And as if on cue, the people of Caltraxis revolted. Terran operatives, long embedded in the underground, rose with caches of hidden weapons. Dominion guards were overrun. The planetary palace was stormed, not by soldiers, but by miners. Poor, dirty, forgotten men and women who remembered their Terran ancestry, with every scar the Dominion gave them. Governor Threx was dragged from his throne and dropped at the feet of a Terran drone. A simple message was transmitted to Terra Prime. The mines are yours again. Kyle Draven read the message and remained silent for a long time. Around him, the War Council debated whether to move the next fleets into core space, strike the Council's heart, break their spine. But Cale was watching something else, a single green light blinking on his personal console. The vault was ready. It was the last piece of their buried past, the God Steel Forge, hidden deep beneath Mars' crust, forgotten even by Earth's remaining factions. It hadn't powered on since the solar collapse. But now, after 100 years of darkness, it was humming again. Yara Holt stood beside him, arms crossed. Are we ready for them to see what we were really capable of? Cale didn't answer. He walked slowly to the center of the chamber, where a holographic schematic spun above the table. A ship unlike any other. The Remembrance. It's more than a ship, he finally said. It's proof. Silas Core, patched into the chamber via comms from the Judicator, nodded grimly. The day that thing launches, the war ends. One way or another. Kyle stared into the projection. No, he whispered. Not a war. A reckoning across the galaxy. Council spies intercepted fragments of transmissions, mentions of the Remembrance, mentions of God Steel. Panic swept through Council chambers. If the Terrans had truly rebuilt their planet-killer vessels, the ones that had turned black holes into weapons, the ones that once held off a dozen fleets during the last days of Earth, then nothing would stop them now. Councillor Veyrak stood before a desperate assembly, the weight of survival behind his words. We must act now. The Remembrance cannot be allowed to launch. If it does, we may no longer be negotiating with humans, but with gods. But it was too late. In the silence of deep Mars, ancient turbines roared. The forge awoke. Steel screamed, and the Remembrance opened its eyes. The Martian sky burned red, not with war, but with birth. As the Remembrance rose from the crust of Mars, the surface cracked beneath it. It wasn't launched. It emerged. Like an ancient god dragging itself from the underworld, wreathed in steam and thunder, its black metal hull groaned with centuries of silence finally broken. The ship was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not sleek, not efficient. It was impossible. A planetary dreadnought the size of a small moon, built entirely from God Steel, a Terran alloy so dense it warped gravitational sensors just by existing. Its hull shimmered with embedded solar cores, pulsating like veins of molten light. Above it, the orbital defense ring, reignited after 122 years, broadcast a single signal on all known frequencies. We have finished remembering. Now we decide what to forgive. Across the stars, every empire paused. On Dominion command ships, captains stood in stunned silence. In council war rooms, advisors vomited from the rising panic. Even fringe pirates, long fed on Terran myth, stopped moving. Not out of fear, out of awe. For the galaxy had finally seen the Terran endgame. This wasn't about reclaiming borders. It was about redrawing history. President Kyle Draven stood aboard the command bridge of the Remembrance, its interior a cathedral of steel and light. The command console wasn't a seat. It was a chamber. The ship didn't respond to commands. It responded to conviction. Only one born of Earth's ashes could command it. And Kale's DNA, stitched with centuries of Terran pain, unlocked its final protocols. Before him, the stars unfolded. Yara Holt's voice came through, steady. Every fleet is watching us. They're waiting for your signal. Silas Core chimed in, more grim. And if you give it, there's no turning back. Kyle didn't flinch. He sent a broadcast, not as a demand, not as a threat, but as a statement of reality. The transmission echoed across every known system. You had your age of gold. You built your towers on the corpses of our children and drank wine while we burned. You called us extinct. You made museums of our bones and sold our songs as artifacts. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to bury the lie. You have one choice left. Acknowledge what was done, or watch what we can do. Councillor Veyrak stood in front of a silent chamber, trembling. They're not bluffing, he whispered. They don't need our approval. They don't need our surrender. They don't need us at all. In a last, frantic act of desperation, the core systems launched Project Terminus, a secret weapon designed to collapse a star within Terran space, to wipe out the Remembrance in a single strike. But the humans were already there. The Judicator intercepted the warhead in deep space, cracking it open and broadcasting its contents galaxy-wide. Coordinates, signatures, launch orders, all traced back to the Council itself. Humanity didn't respond with fire. They responded with proof. Billions of beings saw it, and the galaxy turned. The last thread of sympathy the Council had snapped. Riots consumed their core worlds. Alliances shattered. Refugees flooded Terran borders, not in fear, but in hope. Because for all the fire and fury, for all the steel and silence, The humans had never targeted the innocent. They were monsters only to those who had earned their wrath. And in that, they became something greater than feared. They became trusted. In the weeks that followed, entire empires dissolved. Terran banners rose in their place, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Systems once divided by species, history, and hatred now flew the same flag. A fractured earth mended in steel. Kyle Draven stood on a balcony aboard the Remembrance, watching the stars through reinforced glass. Behind him, a young girl approached, one of the survivors from a forgotten colony world, taken in during the early reclaiming. She looked up at him, eyes wide. "Are we the rulers now?" Kale knelt to her level, voice low, steady. "No," he said. "We're the memory, and the galaxy has a long way to go before it learns to remember right." And as the Terran fleets pulled back, not in retreat, but in silent triumph, the stars shifted, not in alignment, but in understanding. The age of forgetting was over, and the age of reckoning had only just begun.